A 2-month-old baby named Sidal is lying in a hospital bed in Port Sudan. He's being treated for malnutrition. He was photographed this week by the Associated Press, tiny, motionless, surrounded by medical equipment in a country where 70 to 80% of health facilities in conflict zones are no longer functioning. And on the other side of the world, a man named Glenn Hunter stood on the island where he grew up and watched the wind shred everything around him. He said, "I'm guessing anything made of wood and tin did not survive this." And two completely different crises, two completely forgotten corners of the world, both happening right now, and they both demand our attention today. 3 years exactly since the war broke out in Sudan. 3 years of fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces. 3 years of famine. 3 years of massacre. 3 years of the world looking the other way. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres delivered a video message today to an international conference in Berlin convened specifically to address this crisis. He called it what it is: the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Nearly 34 million people inside Sudan are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. That is 65% of the entire population of the country. Over 14 million people have been displaced, 9 million fleeing within Sudan's own border, and about 4.4 million crossing into neighboring countries like Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan. Famine has taken hold in what Guterres called what was once a breadbasket for the region. Hospitals are being bombed. On March 20th, a Sudanese armed force drone struck a hospital in the East Darfur, killing about 70 people that we covered about this, including 15 children. Then we covered the story on April 2nd. The RSF carried out a drone strike on the hospitals in the White Nile, killing at least 10 people, 7 of them being medical staff. Doctors Without Borders confirmed both strikes. So the UN said drone technology is delivering what's called devastating impact into populated areas with no accountability. 70 to 80% of the health infrastructure is active in an active conflict zone, is either non-operational or critically under-resourced. The 3 billion humanitarian response plan for Sudan this year is critically underfunded. Last year, less than 40% of the required support was actually delivered, meaning food aid was cut, medical services were cut, and support for survivors of sexual violence was cut. And this year, the UN says the response is failing even further, shorter than last year. Now, the UN Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher said from Berlin, this grim and fascinating anniversary marks another year when the world has failed to meet the test of Sudan. So the Sudanese government in Khartoum called the Berlin conference unacceptable interference and refused to participate in it. So Sudan is now effectively split into the military-backed government controlling the north and the east, and the RSF controlling Darfur and parts of Kordofan region. So neither sides can achieve decisive victory, and the people caught between them have become what Sudanese journalists have called it this week: powerless and subjugated to foreign dictates. 2-month-old Said Ali is laying in the hospital bed. It's not a statistic, it's his story. And meanwhile, Sudan has been buried under the war coverage. On the other side of the planet this week, a different kind of catastrophe hit people who were used to being forgotten. They're used to being forgotten. So the Northern Mariana Islands, a chain of U.S. territories in North Pacific Ocean, most Americans cannot even place it on the map. This week, they need to know this island exists. Super Typhoon Sinlaku formed on April 9th. By the time it reached the Saipan and the Tinani, I believe that's it's pronounced, it was carrying sustained winds of 175 miles per hour, the equivalence of Category 5 Atlantic hurricane. NASA confirmed it as one of the only handful storms ever recorded at that strength this early in the year. So the storm hit overnight Tuesday into Wednesday in the villages of Suspuz on Saipan. Had the wind tore the roof off commercial buildings and snapped trees in half. Blue sedan lay on the sides. A resident named Don filmed the car sitting on top of 2 other cars in his apartment building. Saipan has about nearly 500 or 50,000 people. They lost their entire power grid. The Commonwealth Utilities Corporation confirmed an island-wide outage. So two areas lost water access immediately. The remainder expected to lose water once backup generators ran out of the fuel. So Rota, there's a smaller island, lost power of nearly all of its 967 residents. Flash flooding in Guam to hit the south, a U.S. territory of 170,000 people with several major U.S. military installations. And so many other things happening globally. We have been a little bit delayed this week on covering some news, but Sudan has been forgotten, 3 years counting. The conference held in Berlin was attended by Germany, the African Union, France, the EU, and the UK and the US, and yet the response plan is still critically underfunded. Yet hospitals are being bombed. Yet 2-month-old babies are still being treated for malnutrition in a country that used to feed the region. If this episode reached you today, subscribe. This is what we do here. We go there, whether cameras or not. We try to bring out stories that are not covered in the mainstream media. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.